Problem-oriented policing seeks to respond to the causes of crime rather than respond to the symptoms. It employs a problem-solving methodology called SARA. SARA is a four-stage approach. It involves scanning, analysis, response and assessment. It requires us to step back and consider how we can prevent crime occurring in the first place rather than simply responding to it. The Phillipstown MPT is an excellent example of prevention first in action. It's changed people's lives, there's less crime and people feel safe.
Phillipstown was Christchurch's most deprived suburb. An initial scan identified a real lack of community cohesion. People didn't feel safe, they weren't connected. Crime was on the increase. The area was absolutely riddled with drug dealing houses. There was an overwhelming presence of gangs, mongrel mob, black power, white power and youth gangs. There was also a high incidence of alcohol abuse. To top it all off, the area also hosted the worst licensed premises in Christchurch. In the 2 years prior to the deployment of the MPT, 4 people were murdered, 2 police officers were shot, and a police dog was killed. All of these incidents had strong links to alcohol and drug abuse, drug dealing, and organised crime.
We generated a number of theories, and then the analysis process enabled us to test those theories against each other, and it enabled us as well to rank them as to what was the most likely. It became apparent that Phillipstown was the place in Christchurch to buy and sell drugs. Initially, when we were only looking at the police data, we were very much focused on the symptoms of the problem. So what was apparent was that there was a burglary problem in Phillipstown. But when we dug deeper into that in the analysis process, what became clear was that people were stealing property to fund their drug habits. It wasn't the burglary that was our problem, it was the drug market behind all of that.
Our first response was enforcement. We had to disrupt the drug dealing trade. We were able to execute a number of warrants in the area.
Open up, it's the police!
The next phase of our responses was prevention. One of the things we needed to do was educate the community 2 things: what we were doing and how they can help. And what we did is we created a little pamphlet on how to identify a drug dealing address and how they can get rid of it. We had a look at neighbourhood support. It was literally non-existent, so we knew we had to really get in behind that. Early on in our existence, we organised a safety panel, and basically that was identifying key members of the community and bringing them together on a regular basis. Now we're into an area now, or phase now, of safe growth. Now, safe growth was initiated at the end of last year. It's working with the community. It's using CPTED principles, which is crime prevention through environmental design.
What the Phillipstown Neighbourhood Policing team has achieved is nothing short of amazing. Here we have a community that now feels safe. In fact, a 2013 survey found that 90% of the residents felt safe or had no safety concerns at all. We've also achieved a 28% reduction in crime over the last 3 years. And that 28% reduction translates to a saving of $5.5 million in the reduction in the cost of crime to that community. But most importantly, what it means is each year there's 215 less victims. Displacement of crime was also a concern for us, especially as those prolific offenders we targeted got the heat turned up on them and they left the area. But we tracked their movements and put them out of action in their new locations.
Since the policing team's come into the neighbourhood, there's been a real sense of community being re-established, and the local residents have been able to reclaim the neighbourhood as their own. The policing team's just been fabulous.
There's been a lot of changes, of course. But the really big one that I think is so important is changing people's perceptions about how they feel about the police and how they feel about themselves.
The residents of Phillipstown are very proud of what they've achieved and where they've come from. They are now a community that stand up for themselves. They are a protected community, one that's been enabled to be safe and feel safe.